On the quiet streets of Schenectady, New York, neighbors once saw Marybeth Tinning as a grieving mother struck by unthinkable tragedy. One child lost to sudden illness was heartbreaking. 2 was devastating. But when 8 children, all under her care, died one after another between 1971 and 1985, the line between misfortune and malevolence blurred. Doctors were baffled, friends whispered, and sympathy began to shift into suspicion. Behind the facade of a mourning parent was a chilling truth. Marybeth Tinning wasn't cursed by fate. She was orchestrating death inside her own home. This is the story of how a mother trusted with life became the architect of loss, and how a community blinded by grief and compassion let her secrets fester for 14 long years. This is Marybeth Tinning, the mother of death. Hey, y'all, I'm Chris Calvert.
And I'm her husband, Rob Potter. Welcome to Hitched to Homicide.
For better or worse,
Till death do us part.
welcome back, everybody.
Yes, welcome. And for our friends in Finland.
Finland.
See if I can do this one correctly. Tervetuloa.
You know, we need to go on one of those world trips because you would be able to say welcome, even though they would be welcoming us into their country.
I saw that, I think it's Royal Caribbean. I don't know who it is. They're doing like 170-day cruise.
Where you cruise around the world?
Yeah, I know. And I'm like, that I could get into.
Dude, I have celiac. I can only go through that buffet line and only eat so many things on that cruise.
Oh, how much fun would it be, though?
I could only eat French fries in a dedicated fryer so many times.
But I'm thinking that if they've got a 170-day cruise, they're going to have a bit more of a...
Nobody thinks about people like me who have celiac. Everybody in the world is a wheat eater except for me and the very few out there who are like me who have to go look at the menu before they go out to dinner with people to be like, okay, I know what I can eat when I get there.
I'm going to check into it.
So wherever you're listening or if you're traveling around the world, be sure to subscribe to Hitched to Homicide. Then like, rate, and review the podcast so other people who love true crime can find us. And if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button below. If you want true crime with us all the time, go to Facebook and join our closed group. It's called the In-Laws and Outlaws. All you have to do is go to Facebook, type in H2H, In-Laws and Outlaws, answer a couple questions. You are in, go join.
Yes.
We love those people. They're great.
Yep.
You can find us on Instagram at Hitched to Homicide or on X at H2H_podcast. And we also have a Buy Me a Coffee link if you want to send Rob some coffee. He drinks it every episode.
Yes,
You can find that link in our show notes. You can also send us a text. The link to that is at the top of the show notes where it says, send Chris and Rob a text.
Yes.
I should probably say in the In-Laws and Outlaws, there's so many jokes about how to bury somebody at this point.
I know, I've seen them.
It just cracks me up.
My favorite one, it wasn't about burying someone, but it was about if you ever want to kill somebody and you don't want them to find the weapon, make sure it's done with a Tupperware lid.
Yeah, because they'll never find it. Yeah. I have said it before, and I'll say it again. If Rob Podorf ever divorces me, it's going to be over the Tupperware cabinet. There it is. I put it out there.
Every time I open it, it's like Jenga.
Jenga. Yeah, it's more like Lost and Found.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Robbie, there's a new Netflix documentary out there that we've even had a little discussion about in the In-Laws and Outlaws. It's called Unknown Number, the High School Catfish.
Yeah.
And that made me think of this case because the mother in that case, if you haven't If you haven't watched this and you want to, fast forward, because the mother is the perpetrator in this case, in the unknown caller, the high school catfish.
Oh, that's right. We talked about that the other day.
Yeah. And it's called Munchausen by internet. And we're going to talk about somebody who has Munchausen by proxy today. Before we get started, let me thank some sources: People Magazine, the Times Union, Wikipedia, Find a Grave, the Washington Post, Radford University, the New York Times, the Seattle Times, Yahoo. Remember when they used to have those commercials? Yeah. CBS News, the New York Post, Reddit, and others that are all listed in the show notes. See, that was a different little rendition of giving you the sources. I had to sing in there a little bit.
Well, before we go on with that, Yahoo and MySpace seems to have gone into the
It's because we're old. They went into the ether.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we're very old. No, we're not old. Yeah. We're only as old as we feel. Today, that's about 95. Tomorrow, that could be 25. Yeah, exactly. So, that's where I am right now.
So you guys on MySpace or anything? All right, you ready to do this?
I am.
All right, let's do it then.
Marybeth Rowe was born on September 11th, 1942 in Duanesburg, New York, just 10 miles south of Schenectady, New York. Duanesboro was a tiny little town in 1984. I read that the census, in 2000, was maybe 6,000 people.
Oh, wow.
So in 1942, you could imagine how small it is.
Yeah.
Marybeth's father, Alton, was deployed overseas during World War II, and her mom worked to support her and her brother. And while both of her parents were away so much, she was shuffled back and forth between relatives. It was during one of those shuffles that one of her elderly relatives told her that she was unwanted. She was an unwanted, accidental child.
Wow.
Not something any child wants to hear, although our son Luke tells his younger sister Haley all the time, you were an accident.
Yeah.
She's doing all right.
Yeah.
When Marybeth is a teenager, she tells her younger brother, you were the one they wanted, not me. And in fact, I read in more than one article that Marybeth attempted suicide more than once when she was growing up. And when her father, Alton, finishes active duty, he takes a job at General Electric as a press operator, and her mom, Ruth, finally stays at home to raise the kids. Now, Marybeth once claimed that her father abused her when she was a little girl. She said that her dad beat her and then locked her in a closet.
Wow.
A story that she's going to kind of recant later, but it's hard to know what Marybeth is saying, what's true and what's not true.
Sure.
Marybeth and her younger brother both attended Duanesburg High School. She was an average student, but I did read that she dreamed of going to college. So a troubled childhood marked by feelings of mistreatment and isolation. She graduates in 1961, and after graduation, Marybeth works a few different jobs. Most of them are low-paying, but she eventually becomes a nurse's aide at Ellis Hospital in Schenectady.
Okay.
I do want to say that Marybeth was never described as a happy, well-adjusted adult.
I wonder why.
But you know what? Somebody might say, Chris is not a well-adjusted adult. She does a true crime podcast, and she writes about killing people. So, in my fictional head and in my true crime head, I don't know. I feel like I'm well-adjusted.
I think you're fine.
But many of her family and friends, they described her as a little bit strange, okay? In 1963, at the age of 21, Marybeth meets Joe Tinning. It was a blind date. We met on a blind date.
Sure did.
Joe Tinning was a happy-go-lucky guy. These two fall in love, and 2 years later, Marybeth and Joe are married in the spring of 1965. So he's happy-go-lucky. She's maladjusted. Yin and yang, opposites attract.
Mm-hmm.
Joe, like Marybeth's father, also works for General Electric. Small town with a factory, lots of people would work there. 2 years later, in May of 1967, Marybeth gives birth to their first child. It's a little girl, Barbara Ann. 3 years after, in January of 1970, their second child is born, a boy, Joseph Jr. A year later, in October of 1971, when Marybeth is 7 months pregnant, her father, Alton, has a sudden and massive heart attack and dies.
Oh, wow.
And 3 months later, on December 26, 1971, just a day after Christmas, Jennifer, the Tinning's third child, is born at St. Clair's Hospital. But Jennifer is born with lots of complications. She had hemorrhagic meningitis and multiple brain abscesses that developed in utero. And little Jennifer would only live for a week. She never leaves the hospital.
Gotcha.
So back-to-back, Marybeth has had tragic and horrific deaths, her father and now a child. Then on January 20th, 1972, just 17 days after Jennifer dies at the hospital, Marybeth rushes 2-year-old Joe Jr. to the Ellis Hospital emergency room in Schenectady. She tells the doctors and nurses that he'd had a seizure and choked on his own vomit. Little Joe stayed in the hospital for a few hours for observation, but he's released when they can't seem to find anything wrong with him. Then hours after his release, Marybeth brings him back to the Ellis Hospital, but this time little Joe Jr. is dead on arrival. The cause? Well, the death certificate would attribute the death to cardiopulmonary arrest. Marybeth told the doctors that she'd placed him in bed and returned later to find him tangled in the sheets and his body was blue. When the police question her, she tells the detectives that Joe Jr. was taking a nap. And according to her, it was an unusually long nap, and she didn't go in and check on him. Quote, "And when I did, he appeared to have respiratory problems, of which I did not cause," end quote. That's an odd thing to say.
Thou doth protest a bit too much.
On March 1st, 1972, just weeks after Joe Jr. is DOA, Marybeth rushes Barbara Ann, the firstborn, to Ellis Hospital. Barbara has gone into convulsions. The next day, March 2nd, Barbara dies after being in a coma for several hours. Barbara Ann was 4 years old. And Barbara Ann's death was attributed to Rye syndrome, which is a rare condition that causes swelling in the liver and brain, and it mostly affects children and teens who are recovering from a viral infection, most commonly the flu or the chickenpox. And aspirin has actually been linked with Rye syndrome, but Children don't really take baby aspirin anymore.
Right.
So you have to remember this is the 70s.
Sure.
I can remember taking it. Chewables, it was awful.
Yeah.
Now, Flintstone vitamins, that's something I could get behind, but not the chewable baby aspirin.
We just had jelly beans.
What does that mean?
I don't know.
And now 3 of Marybeth's children have died in the span of 90 days.
Jeez.
Jennifer, the one born with the birth defect, passes away first. She never leaves the hospital. So 3 funerals in 90 days. The whispers in town are that there must be some kind of genetic disorder that's passed from Marybeth to her children. So everyone is very surprised when the next year, 1973, Marybeth is pregnant, and this is baby number 4. On November 22nd, 1973, Marybeth gives birth to Timothy, a tiny little thing that weighs just 5 pounds. Timothy is born on Thanksgiving Day, but just 3 weeks after his birth, on December 10th, Marybeth brings Timothy back to Ellis Hospital. Marybeth tells the doctors that she had found him in his crib. He wasn't breathing, and when she brings him into the ER, Timothy is dead. When the doctors examined him, they found nothing wrong and attributed his death to SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome.
Right.
4 babies, 4 deaths.
Man.
Again, everyone is talking. Was it some sort of new disease? But at the same time, people were whispering about how all the children, with the exception of Jennifer, seemed healthy and active before they died. Mm-hmm. And they also wondered, if this is a genetic disorder, why are Joe and Marybeth continuing to have children?
Right.
And all of this death and stress has put a real strain on Marybeth and Joe's marriage. Their love was on the rocks, and I read in one account that Marybeth had taken a lover and she wanted Joe gone. Then in 1974, a year after Timothy dies, Joe is admitted to the hospital with a near-fatal dosage of barbiturates.
Really?
Well, Marybeth gets barbiturates from a friend, with an epileptic daughter and puts phenobarbital into Joe's grape juice.
What?
He recovers after he's hospitalized, and he does not press charges against his wife, even when he discovers what she had done and believed their marriage was strong enough to survive the ordeal.
He might not be able to survive the ordeal.
For better or worse, for richer or poorer, in barbiturates and in health, honey.
Good grief. Wow.
Even through the rough and rocky patches, Marybeth and Joe seem to have a healthy sex life because March 30th, 1975, Easter Sunday, Marybeth has a fifth child, Nathan. But that autumn, on September 2nd, Marybeth shows up at St. Clair's Hospital with the baby in her arms. She said she was driving in her car with the baby in the front seat, when she noticed that he'd stopped breathing. Nathan's death is again attributed to SIDS. And one of Marybeth's friends said, quote, "I can still see his darling little face. His hair was so blonde with those big blue eyes and that smile. He was the most perfect specimen of a little baby boy. He was just beautiful," end quote.
Wow.
Now, what would a woman who's had 5 children and 4 suspicious deaths, because the one daughter, Jennifer, that wasn't suspicious, what would she do? You've had 5 children die.
Right.
And 4 of them were biologically yours. Well, she adopts. August 1978, Marybeth and Joe adopt a newborn, Michael. Now, mind you, Marybeth is 7 months pregnant when they adopt Michael. And on October 29th, 1978, Marybeth gives birth to her 6th child, Mary Frances. 3 months later, in January of 1979, Marybeth rushes Mary Frances to the ER right across the street from their apartment, and she says that Mary Frances is having a seizure. And this time, the staff in the ER are able to revive little Mary Frances, and in her chart, they say it is aborted SIDS. 1 month later, on February 20th, Marybeth returns to the hospital again with Mary Frances. This time, the baby's in full cardiac arrest. And when she's revived, Mary Frances had irreversible brain damage. She died 2 days later after Marybeth took her off of life support.
Wow.
Once Mary Frances is dead and buried, Marybeth is pregnant again.
Good Lord.
Now, they still have their adopted son, Michael, but baby number 7 is born in the fall of 1979 on November 19th, and they name him Jonathan. And Michael, who is now 13 months old and in good health, has a little brother. In March of 1980, Marybeth shows up at the hospital, St. Clair's. 4-month-old Jonathan is unconscious. He is successfully revived and sent to a Boston hospital where he can be thoroughly examined, and the doctors find no valid medical reason why he stopped breathing, so Jonathan is sent home. A few days later, Marybeth returned to the hospital with Jonathan. This time, the infant is brain dead. Jonathan dies March 24th, 1980, after being kept on life support in Albany, New York, for 4 weeks.
Wow.
One after the other.
Yeah.
Nearly a year later, in February of 1981, Michael, the adopted child and the only one who is still alive, falls down the stairs and suffers a concussion. He's 2.5. 1 month later, on March 2nd, Marybeth takes Michael to the doctor because he, quote, wouldn't wake up, end quote. Michael was dead when Marybeth brings him into the doctor's office, wrapped in a blanket. She tells the doctor that she couldn't wake Michael and she didn't know what was wrong. Later, when recalling the incident, she said, quote, "I went in the morning to get him up and we could go to the doctor's. He was was responsive to a point, but he was very limp and so on and so forth. And so instead of calling an ambulance, I went from our house, put him in the car, literally threw him in the car, and went to St. Clair's. I went to Dr. Mel's office and went in there with the baby. One of the doctors, I guess, took me and they said he died of viral pneumonia," end quote.
Okay.
So on and so forth.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not criticizing her ability to express her grief, but that is 6 babies and toddlers. I'm not counting Jennifer, who was born with lots of complications.
Yeah.
Now, since Michael was adopted, the long-suspected theory that the Tinnings had genetic defects that continued to plague their children, that is out the window.
Yeah.
And some of the nurses questioned Marybeth's odd behavior over Michael's death. They noticed that when she first realized that Michael was sick that morning, she could have easily walked across the street to the ER. I mean, she talks about calling an ambulance.
Yeah.
But they lived across the street from the emergency room. And in fact, she had done that when the other babies died. But instead, she let hours pass until the doctor's office opened. And then she wrapped his dead body in a blanket and took him into the doctor's office.
Man.
4 years later, Marybeth, who is 42 years old at this point, gives birth to baby number 9, Tammy Lynn, on August 22nd, 1985. Because of the past SIDS babies, her current pediatrician tells her he wants Tammy Lynn to use a SIDS monitor. Seems like a reasonable request, right?
Sure.
Marybeth says
no. Really?
On December 19th, just 4 months after Tammy Lynn is born, Marybeth goes shopping with her next-door neighbor, Cynthia Walter, a licensed practical nurse. And later that day, Cynthia visits Marybeth at her home, and while there, Cynthia asks to hold little Tammy Lynn. And Marybeth allows it, but then Marybeth asks Cynthia to give Tammy Lynn back to her. And Cynthia thinks it felt hinky, it was odd, but she gives the baby back and she goes home. And later that night, Marybeth calls Cynthia. She's losing her mind. When Cynthia arrives at Marybeth's apartment, Tammy Lynn is lying on the changing table. There's no movement and no pulse. The baby is blue. The ambulance comes and takes the baby away, and Cynthia asks Marybeth what happened. And Marybeth tells her that Tammy Lynn was tangled in the blanket. In the emergency room, Tammy Lynn is pronounced dead. Now, Cynthia visits Marybeth and Joe the very next day. She wants to check on her good friend. She wants to check on them. And she assumes that Marybeth will be grieving, that she will be beside herself. And she walks into their house and finds them in the kitchen eating breakfast as if nothing has happened. Nothing is wrong. Nothing to see here.
Jeez.
And Cynthia tells them to call if they need anything. And after the funeral, Marybeth has people over for a brunch. She's smiling, eating, conversing with everyone there. It reminds me of the scene in The Sixth Sense where the mom is giving the little girl cleaning solution in her food and slowly killing her because she likes all the attention of being the doting mother. She wants the sympathy.
Right.
Marybeth's sister-in-law, Sandy Rowe, who was married to Marybeth's brother, said that Marybeth didn't seem upset about Tammy Lynn's death at all. They talked about Christmas and never spoke of the death of the baby. It didn't seem to bother her. Again, not judging how she chooses to grieve, but...
Right.
Marybeth has had 9 children in her charge and care, 8 she gave birth to, and 1 that she adopted. They are all dead.
Man.
And what about the husband, Joe? Nothing seemed to bother Joe. Each time one of their children died, he dressed up in the exact same clothes. He'd go to the very same funeral home. They'd have the same funeral service. He'd sit there quietly at the wake and would not say a word.
Yeah.
Now, here are the things that many of these deaths had in common, not including Jennifer. Marybeth was always alone with the children when they died, and there was never any evidence of wrongdoing until on the day of Tammy Lynn's death, the last child, Marybeth is visited by Betsy Mannix of the Schenectady County Department of Social Services and Bob Imfield of the Schenectady Police Department.
And not a moment too soon.
Exactly. Why now? Why now? Well, it's 1985, and forensics have improved, and there was evidence that Tammy Lynn died of suffocation. Now, the causes of all the children's death were listed between natural and undetermined and SIDS, 14 years, 9 dead children.
Yeah.
They're finally coming to check on her. And according to Robert Sullivan, the chief medical examiner of Schenectady County, quote, "There were so many of us in audit, I guess. If anyone is negligent, I suppose I am. I probably should have said there must be more to this than we think. But we all think and don't do, end quote. Well, I don't know that we don't all do, but okay.
I was about to say, you think?
Mm-hmm. Schenectady Police Chief Richard Nelson contacted my favorite forensic pathologist, Dr. Michael Bodden. Mm-hmm. This is the guy who did the HBO show Autopsy.
Yeah.
And Bodden was the chief medical examiner of New York City from 1978 to 1979. And Police Chief Nelson wants to ask Dr. Bodden some questions about SIDS. And one of the first questions he asks is it possible for 9 children in one family to die of natural causes, or SIDS? And Dr. Bodden told him that it was not possible and asked to see the case files. And he also explained to the police chief that children who die from sudden infant death syndrome, SIDS, do not turn blue. When these babies pass away, they look like normal children when they die. And if a baby was blue, Dr. Bodden said it was probably caused by homicidal asphyxia. Wow. Someone had smothered these children.
Wow.
Schenectady Assistant DA Alan Goodell says to the police, don't arrest Marybeth without a confession. And as they start digging deeper into Marybeth and her dead children, they discover that she's been passed around from doctor to doctor because no one wanted her as a patient.
Wow.
Nobody wanted to take care of her or her kids. On the afternoon of February 4th, 1986, Schenectady Police Detective Bob Emfield and State Police Investigator Joseph Karras go to the Tinnings' home. She's under no obligation to go to the police station since there's no arrest warrant, but they tell her that she needs to clear her name. Come in, clear up suspicions about the death of Tammy Lynn.
Yeah, right.
And Marybeth agrees, and she and Joe are both taken to the station, and they are questioned separately about Tammy Lynn's death. Marybeth has read her Miranda rights, and she agrees to speak with investigators. She talks about all the children she's lost to SIDS, with the exception of Jennifer, who never left the hospital. As far as Tammy Lynn, she said she put her daughter to sleep in her crib as she normally did. Tammy Lynn was crying that night, which annoyed her because it made her feel like an unfit mother. She said she watched TV, then she went to check on Tammy Lynn, and she discovered that she wasn't breathing. Marybeth tells him she picks up the baby and makes an attempt to revive her, but nothing works. She wakes up Joe, and they called an ambulance.
Yeah, like every other time.
Or, usually she just walks across the street.
Yeah.
But Marybeth is then questioned by Bill Barnes from the state police, and as luck would have it, Bill and Marybeth went to school together in Duanesburg and grew up together. So it's a very small town. And when Bill walks into the room to question Marybeth, she stands up, she kissed him on the cheek, she gives him a hug, and Marybeth's interview lasts numerous hours. And during this time, investigators Emfield and Karras talked about the deaths of all her children. They went back 14 years, and the details remembered by Marybeth were not really jiving with the case files and the known medical facts. But after so many deaths, it's possible, it's plausible, she's confused over all these children. What happened to which one?
Yeah, you lose track of how they died.
Yeah.
Jeez.
When Marybeth was confronted with the suspicious facts of her 9 deceased children, at first she denies having anything to do with the deaths, saying, quote, "I didn't do it," over and over and over. But after several hours of State Police Officer Bill Barnes, her friend, hammering her with questions, Marybeth gives in. She insists she never hurt most of the children, except Tammy Lynn. Nathan and Timothy were the exceptions. Quote, "I did not do anything to Jennifer, Joseph, Barbara, Michael, Mary Frances, Jonathan. Just these 3, Timothy, Nathan, and Tammy Lynn," end quote.
Wow.
When Marybeth was finally reunited with Joe, because they're questioned separately, these two have a brief conversation, and Joe asks her to tell the truth, whatever that is. And she starts to cry, and the police are witnesses to this. And after a few minutes, Marybeth admits to Joe that she murdered Tammy Lynn. Quote, "I killed Tammy," end quote.
Oh, man.
And she said it so softly, she had to repeat it. And Joe had no reaction to Marybeth's statements. According to Joe, quote, I had withdrawn into myself. I was hearing, but I wasn't reacting, end quote. He's in shock.
Yeah.
But also, he seems oblivious to everything. Not saying Joe's complicit, but he did live there.
Well, I have a theory on that, but I'll say it later.
Okay. Police called in a stenographer, and together, while the investigators asked questions and Marybeth responded, they compiled a 36-page statement, and in it, Marybeth admitted to suffocating 3 children, but continued to insist that she never harmed the others. She tells police that on the night of Tammy Lynn's death, she was sleeping on the living room couch. Quote, I was about to doze off when Tammy woke up and started to cry. I got up and went to her crib and tried to do something with her to get her to stop crying. I finally used the pillow from my bed and put it over her head. I held it until she stopped crying, end quote.
Monster.
After this, she puts the pillow on the couch to convince her husband, Joe, she'd been sleeping, and then she screamed for Joe. Quote, I told Joe Tammy Lynn wasn't breathing. I did do CPR, stupid as it sounds, but I knew that she wasn't alive anymore, end quote. And when authorities asked why she killed Tammy, Marybeth said, quote, because she was always crying and I couldn't do anything right, end quote. Well, welcome to motherhood. Yeah. Now, I realize they didn't know a lot or do a lot for postpartum depression, and these children are all dying, pretty soon after they're born, with the exception of Michael.
Right.
Yeah. But welcome to motherhood. Children cry. Being a mom, a new mom, it is tough. And anybody who says it isn't is lying. Yep. It is really hard to be a new mom.
Yeah.
Quote, I smothered them each with a pillow because I'm not a good mother. I'm not a good mother because of the other children, end quote.
What does that mean?
She's not a good mother because of the others who died on their own, I suppose.
Okay, whatever.
Marybeth was arrested and formally charged with the murder of Tammy Lynn. Then Marybeth's attorney, Paul Callahan, comes in and says, hey, Marybeth has told me that confession, it was forced. And at the preliminary hearing, Marybeth said the police had threatened to dig up the bodies of her children and rip them limb from limb during the interrogation. Now, here's my thought. I think they probably said, we may have to exhume the bodies of your children. Mm-hmm. She said that the 36-page statement was a false confession, just a story that the police were telling, and she was just repeating it. Despite her efforts to block her confession, though, the entire 36-page statement was permitted as evidence at her trial.
Good.
Now, it's important to remember that it was after Jennifer's death that the others began to die one by one. And remember, Dr. Bodden, he believed that Marybeth Tinning suffered from acute Munchausen by Proxy Syndrome. He said that Marybeth was a sympathy junkie. So remember, her dad died and her daughter died very close, back to back. And then after that, the older children, because Jennifer was not the firstborn. Right. She had 2 older children.
Right.
And according to Dr. Bodden, quote, she liked the attention of people feeling sorry for her from the loss of her children, end quote.
That was exactly what I was thinking when her father died and then the one baby.
Jennifer, right, never left the hospital.
Yeah. And
she got all kinds of attention and sympathy.
Yeah,
and she liked it.
Oh.
And just for reference, the psychological factors involved in Munchausen are a need for attention or sympathy. Usually they have a personality disorder like narcissism. They have low self-esteem and identity issues. They feel invisible or powerless. So creating illness in a child provides a sense of purpose and control. Sometimes they have past trauma like a history of abuse or neglect. And there's also environmental and social factors like having some healthcare training, which equips them to manipulate symptoms and avoid detection. Remember, she worked as a nurse's aide before she started having kids.
Right.
There are other indicators, but at the root is the psychological reward, the attention, praise, the control gained from the role of, quote, the suffering but heroic caregiver, end quote. And in the documentary that I referenced at the very beginning, that's exactly what that mother was doing. she's bullying her own child online, and she's also being this heroic caregiver looking for this bully and taking care of her daughter and getting her daughter to love her so much, to lean on her. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Wow.
The murder trial of Marybeth Tinning opened in Schenectady County Court on June 22nd, 1987. The prosecuting attorney, John Porsche's opening statement, he said, quote, "Once you've heard all the evidence and assimilated it, you will come back with a verdict of murder in the second degree against Marybeth Tinning, who murdered her child by smothering it," end quote. The medical testimony at the trial was really complex. There were several doctors, lots of experts who all held different opinions about the dead Tinning children. Dr. Bradley Ford, who examined Tammy Lynn when she was an infant, advised Marybeth and Joe that in light of their family history, a crib monitor should be installed, a SIDS detector, quote, "but the parents elected not to use it," end quote. And ironically, the doctor didn't insist on the monitor because the baby was in such good health. Tammy Lynn was in such good health. He was like, okay, I'm not going to insist on the SIDS monitor, even though I'm saying you should do it. She looks great. So, yeah.
Wow.
The defense called several physicians to the stand to refute allegations and to offer evidence that all the Tinning children suffered from a genetic defect. Dr. Arnulf Kolpin, a pathologist at Albany VA Hospital, told the court that it was his belief that Jonathan, the seventh child, died from Werning-Hoffman disease, a genetic disease that attacks the spinal column. But when he's pressed about it, he couldn't say that Tammy Lynn had the disease as well. Dr. Jack N.P. Davies, a well-known pathologist, went a step further. He claimed that the affliction that killed all 9 children was unknown. Quote, "Frankly, I think this may be some new syndrome, a new disease," end quote. Well, it is.
Yeah.
It's Munchausen by proxy syndrome.
Yeah.
But the prosecution called Dr. Marie Valdez da Pina, a nationally recognized expert on sudden infant death syndrome, who said in light of the family's history, it was almost likely suffocation with a soft object. And of course, Marybeth confessed it was a pillow.
Right.
But one thing bothered the jurors. Marybeth Tinning was accused of the worst crime a mother could commit. She was labeled a baby killer, and she was staring down a life sentence if she was convicted, and she refused to take the stand in her own defense. The trial lasted for 6 weeks. The jury deliberated for 23 hours over a course of 3 days. And the verdict?
Guilty.
1 count of second-degree murder by depraved indifference to human life. So murder that isn't premeditated but caused by her reckless conduct that displays an obvious lack of concern for human life. When the verdict is read, Marybeth put her hands over her eyes and quietly cried. After the trial is over, Joe says, quote, "I still think she's innocent," end quote. What you say?
Wow. Jeez.
The Judge Clifford Harrigan vacated the $100,000 bail and mandated that Marybeth be held in the Schenectady County Jail until her sentencing trial on October 2nd, 1987. And the prosecutor asked the court for a maximum sentence of 25 years to life. Quote, "This woman knew the consequences of all her acts. She is a wicked woman," end quote. Marybeth's defense attorney, Paul Callahan, requested the minimum, 15 years. And when the judge asked Marybeth if she had anything to say, she read from a prepared statement, and here it is. Quote, "I want you and the people in this courtroom to know that I am very sorry that Tammy Lynn is dead. There's not a day that goes by that I don't think of her. I miss her very much. I just want you to know that I played no part in the death of my daughter, Tammy Lynn. I will try to hold my head high and accept the punishment that society and the court requires for the crime I was convicted of. I did not commit this crime, but will serve the time in prison to the best of my ability. However, I will never stop fighting to prove my innocence. The Lord above and I know I am innocent. One day the whole world will know that I am innocent, and maybe I can have my life back once again, or what is left of it," end quote.
You know, I have a feeling the Lord's up there going, yo, 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 yo.
Yeah.
I'm not a part of this.
Yeah. And he said it just like that. Yo, 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 yo. Marybeth was sentenced to 25 years to life, 5 years shorter than the maximum penalty. There were shout-outs in the courtroom like, baby killer. All these people are in the courtroom, and they're shouting at her.
Right.
The district attorney's office promised additional prosecutions for the deaths of the other children, but it never happened. In August 1989, Marybeth was indicted for the murders of Nathan, who was 6 months old, and Timothy, who was 16 days old, but the charges were dropped due to a lack of evidence. Tammy Lynn was the only murder of which Marybeth was ever convicted. She was imprisoned at the maximum security prison in Bedford Hills Correctional Facility for Women in Bedford, New York. She appealed her sentence, but was denied by the New York State Supreme Court. In March of 2007, Marybeth has her first attempt at parole. At the parole board meeting, Marybeth says, quote, I have to be honest, and the only thing that I can tell you is that I know that my daughter is dead. I live with it every day. I have no recollection, and I can't believe that I harmed her. I can't say more than that, end quote. Her parole is denied.
Yeah.
2 years later, in late January 2009, Marybeth goes before the parole board again, where this time she says she was going through bad times when she killed her daughter. Again, the parole board denied her parole, stating that her remorse was, quote, superficial at best, end quote.
Yeah.
Then on January 26, 2011, Marybeth, who is now 68 years old, has yet another parole board hearing. And this time she says, quote, after the deaths of my other children, I just lost it. I became a damaged, worthless piece of a person. And when my daughter was young, in my state of mind at that time, I just believed that she was going to die also. So I just did it, end quote. And the parole commissioner, Mary Ross, asks Marybeth, quote, what were you thinking when your children were dying? End quote. To which Marybeth says, quote, 2 things that I wanted in life was to be married to someone who cared for me and to have children. Other than that, I can't give you a reason. When I look back, I see a very damaged and just a messed up person. And I have tried to become a better person while I was here, trying to be able to stand on my own and ask for help when I need it, others when they need it. Sometimes I try not to look in the mirror, and when I do, there's no words that I can express now. I feel none. I'm just none, end quote. She is denied parole once again.
You think? Wow.
Due to her lack of remorse.
Yeah.
At the same time, the people she was around in the prison said that Marybeth was one of the most loving, most generous, caring people they'd ever met. At her next parole hearing in 2013, she is again questioned about the murder of Tammy Lynn, saying that she can't remember why she did it. She knows she did it, but she can't say why because there is no reason. And again, she is denied parole. And Marybeth's next opportunity for parole would come in 2015. And again, she is denied. Her 6th opportunity comes in January of 2017. The parole board denied her, but they ordered her to return for another hearing in 18 months instead of 2 years. And on August 21st, 2018, Marybeth Tinning, at the age of 76, was released on parole. She had served more than 31 years of the 20 years to life sentence.
Wow.
And guess who was waiting for her?
Joe.
Yep.
Wow.
Joe supported her throughout her entire incarceration and was there for her when she was released. And here's my favorite quote from Joe. Quote, there were things to make me suspicious, but you have to trust your wife. She has her things to do, and as long as she gets them done, you don't ask no questions, end quote. She has her things to do.
Like killing her kids.
And his. Under the terms of Marybeth's release, she remains under the supervision of a parole officer for the rest of her life. And from everything I could find, as of 2025, Marybeth and Joe Tinning are still married and are still alive.
Wow. Well, at least they can't have kids anymore.
Yeah, done with that.
Yeah.
So she spent 31 years, 76 years old when she's finally out.
Wow.
But that is like the biggest, that is the most egregious case of Munchausen by proxy that I think is out there. Yeah. It's just absolutely crazy. Now, today, she would never get away with it. No one would get away with it. Everybody's too aware. Sure. Everybody's too suspicious.
Right.
But that is the story of Marybeth Tinning and her 9 children. And that's all I have to say about that. For nearly 7 years, Jane Doe has lived in the shadows, her past buried deep beneath layers of secrecy and silence. After completing more than was asked of her in her last assignment for the enigmatic Kywolf project, Jane Doe vanished without a trace, leaving behind a trail of dead bodies and unanswered questions. But now, as the specter of her past returns with a vengeance, Jane finds herself thrust back into a world she thought she'd left behind forever. When her former sins come knocking on her door, Jane is faced with an impossible choice: continue to hide in the shadows, or once again take up arms against the forces that threaten to tear apart the fabric of society. With enemies lurking around every corner and allies who may not be what they seem, Jane must rely on her wits, training, and her unyielding determination to survive. And while trust is a luxury she cannot afford, Jane must confront the truth about herself and her past. As the clock ticks, she realizes that the line between family, friend, and foe are razor thin, and in the end, the only person she can rely on is herself. Jane Doe 4 Charlotte is available September 24th, 2024. No name, no regrets, no mercy.
Okay, well, I only have one take on this whole thing.
Okay.
And that relates back to Joe.
Joe.
And I think Joe was one of those guys that he knew what was happening.
He had to know.
But he was in such denial, and he was such a wimp that he basically just crawled inside of himself and refused to believe anything.
Yeah, just kept going to the same funeral home in the same suit, and, they just kept burying the children, and they just kept having more children.
Yeah.
You would think at some point, her gynecologist, somebody would say, look, maybe we put you on some birth control. Maybe you think about not having any more kids. Maybe you see a psychologist or a psychiatrist about how all this is affecting you. But It was the 70s, and, by the time it was the mid-80s, she was caught.
Yeah.
But poor 9 little angels are gone.
Yeah, yeah.
Shaking my head.
Yep, me too. That's just sad, amazing, and stupid.
It is. And I'm sorry if I spoiled the other story for you about the unknown caller, but it's a great documentary. Go watch it. It's really, really good.
Good. All right. Well, let's lighten it up a little bit with a little Bless Your Heart.
Well, bless your heart.
All right. Number 1, I'm calling Alligators and Dogs and Cops. Oh, my.
Lions and tigers and bears.
Now, typically when I talk about a naked criminal, it usually has something to do with drug abuse. And this time, the excuse the birthday-suited intruder gave cops is a little nuts.
Can you imagine if somebody naked just ran into your house? Okay, tell me the story. I don't even know the story. Keep going.
Yeah, a little nuts, no pun intended.
Aha,
Thank
but
you. Police responded to a reported burglary at a home, and an officer arrived at the address to find a naked man, later identified as Shelton, lying in the buff on the driveway with the homeowner standing next to him.
Shelton is lying in the driveway, butt naked.
You got it. According to court documents, Shelton told the officer alligators were after him and resisted arrest before he was finally handcuffed. After his arrest, police recovered Shelton's boxers and a fanny pack by the home's front door. Inside the fanny pack, officers found 2 blue pills marked M30. I tried to find what M30 was, and I couldn't find it.
MD30?
No, it just
maybe?
said
M30?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Per court documents, right, Shelton told police that he smoked methamphetamine before thinking an alligator was trying to get him.
That'll do it.
Now, here you go. During the interview with investigators, Shelton reportedly kept asking if dogs were after him and that he took his clothes off because he kept getting bit.
Bless his heart.
Shelton was booked into the Maricopa County Jail on charges including burglary, indecent exposure, and resisting arrest. Records show Records show he has previous criminal, I can't stop laughing at this, has previous criminal records dating back nearly 40 years.
40?
For other charges, including drug possession, domestic violence threats, and disorderly conduct.
You know, you always see in cops where they have the blue gloves on.
Yep.
How do you handle a naked? I don't write that. I mean, nobody's, drugged out and naked in a driveway in any of my fictional books. So I've never had to ask a cop how they handle that, but I'm assuming they do it delicately.
All I can say is God bless the cops.
God bless them.
All right, number 2. Dessert to go.
Okay.
Lancaster County, Pennsylvania.
Oh.
A 24-year-old Lancaster man is charged after allegedly stealing a number of items, including 3 cakes from Weiss's Market on Millersville Pike.
This is an Amish area.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Police say 24-year-old DeQuai Anthony Jackson picked up 3 cakes from the bakery counter on May 28th. Jackson also picked up several other items, including canned goods, a small package of cupcakes, and a box of chips, according to authorities.
It's got his sweets and his savories,
You got
okay?
it. Yep. Jackson then allegedly went through the self-checkout and only scanned the box of chips and cupcakes, which totaled $12.99. According to police, Jackson failed to scan the remaining items, including the 3 cakes, which totaled $90.40.
Wow.
Yeah. Police say a witness told them that the person who ordered the cake was the same person in the photos printed on the cakes and that they had not been paid for online.
Oh, my gosh. So his face was on the cake?
Manheim Township police say that this is Jackson's 3rd offense for retail theft. A warrant has been issued for his arrest.
Did they use a picture of the cake instead of a mugshot? That's what I'm wondering.
It was on the 6 o'clock news. I don't know. All right, number 3 and finally.
Finally.
Dancing with the Stars Behind Bars. Like that one?
I did like that one.
All right. A woman very upset after her McDonald's messed up her order took things into another level.
Okay.
Tanias Jones was arrested after she threw a tantrum inside the restaurant. She was asked to pull forward after getting the wrong order.
She got 7 nuggets instead of 8.
Instead, she parked and stormed inside the building. There she called 911 to complain, then started twerking and trashed the restaurant.
She started twerking?
Yep. Knocking down signs, going behind the counter, and knocking cups and lids onto the floor.
Well, there you go.
Police arrived and she was arrested.
It was dinner and a show.
Yes. What a floor show.
That would never happen at Chick-fil-A.
No.
Have you ever seen the girl who says, you get an extra something in your Chick-fil-A? The Lord meant for it to happen that way.
Exactly.
You just gotta roll with it. You just gotta roll with it.
They just don't want anybody twerking in the restaurant.
Bless her heart.
I know.
Well, they should have tossed her an extra nugget. Everything would have been fine. There would have been no twerking.
Yeah, God.
Well, if you have a bless your heart or you know somebody's heart who needs blessing, all you have to do is go to Hitched to Homicide. When you get there, there's a pull-down menu. That's hitchedtohomicide.com, by the way.
Yep.
When you get there, there's a pull-down menu, and while you're there, you can also tell us about your brush with true crime or suggest a case.
Yes.
That's my amazing husband out there.
And that's my beautiful bride in the booth.
Join us next time on Hitched to Homicide.
Bye, y'all.